Hi, and welcome to the session about integrating with Fliplet. We have, in the last few months, added quite a lot of different and new integration options with Fliplet. And this session today is going to talk you through all about why they are really good integration options and why you should be using them. So, firstly, I am your host. My name is Jo. I have been working here at Fliplet in the customer success team for the last 6 years. I am really lucky because I have a great job where I get to work with all of our customers to see what apps they're building. I get to hear all about their pain points. And actually, a lot of the integration options that we're going to talk about today, they've come out of conversations that we've had with clients, things that we've seen them doing, things that they've asked us to build for them. So this is going to be a really, really great session for you today to learn all about the powers of integrations. So we're going to quickly start with just going over the agenda for the sessions today, and then we'll dive right into the details. So for those of you that don't know Fliplet, I'm just going to do a really quick introduction of who we are and what we do. Then we're going to look at why you should be integrating your existing systems with Fliplet, really kind of understanding the power of these integrations and what they can do for you. And then we're going to look at 3 specific integrations. So we're going to start with looking at Microsoft and Office 365. Then we're going to look at HighQ Collaborate, and then we're going to finish off with Litera Foundation. And then at the end of the session, we'll do a quick summary and the next steps if you wanted to start using any of these integrations. So that's the quick agenda. Let's now move into a really quick introduction to what Fliplet is. So Fliplet, for those of you that are completely new to us, we are a really easy to use drag and drop app building platform. The idea is that we have a ton of pre-built components for you, including pre-built app solutions, meaning that we're really trying to make app development quick and easy for you. Instead of having to go and build your own apps with your developers, come into our platform, select one of our pre-built solutions, customize it with the pre-built drag and drop components, add your own branding in there, add your content, and that's pretty much it. Your app is good to go. It really can speed up app development from taking months and even years up to just a couple of weeks' time. We are a no-code or a low-code solution. So what that means is that if you have the capabilities, you can also add your own custom code on top of your apps to really customize them and make them your own. Another great advantage of using a platform like Fliplet is that we take care of all of your publishing and distribution options for you. So if you're building an app with Fliplet, firstly, you'll get it so it'll work across mobile, desktop, and tablets. It'll be fully optimized and responsive across all of the different devices. And you can pick then which publishing methods that you want to launch with. So are you building a client-facing app that needs to go to the public app stores? We've got options for that. If you're building an internal-facing app that needs to go into your enterprise app stores or your MDM, then we've got options for that as well. So it's fully flexible depending on the types of apps that you're building with us, and you can kind of pick and choose depending on the different use case that you have. And finally, a really big pain point with building apps in general is making sure that you keep the infrastructure up to date. There are things like Apple and Google making updates every year to their operating systems. The great thing about using a platform like Fliplet is that we take care of all of that for you. So we take care of making sure our app infrastructure is always up to date. They will always work on the latest native iOS systems. They'll always work on the latest Android systems. We keep building and adding more components. We make sure that we've got our security at an enterprise grade. So making sure that the apps are all kind of there and secure for you. Lots of things that would take a lot of manpower to do by yourself. We take care of all of that for you. So that is a really quick introduction to Fliplet and what we do. So now let's dive into why you should actually integrate your systems with Fliplet. So the way that this kind of came about is that we work with a ton of clients and they are building a lot of different kinds of apps with us. But what we've realized in the last few years is that those apps, the absolute best apps, it's all about the information and the data that those apps are either displaying, collecting, or sharing with your users. And what we've also realized is that you already have this data most of the time living in your existing systems. So we have focused our integrations specifically on what we see our customers doing often and the systems that we know that you're using and that will be really highly valuable for you to integrate with. So what we've seen in the past is that a lot of our clients, before we had these integrations, had to manually copy paste out of their systems into the Fliplet system to then get that data and information into the app. So that's quite a time-consuming task. You have to have somebody actually manually doing that process, copy paste, and then you have two databases that you need to update and make sure that they're in sync. So the integration definitely is a really powerful tool to make sure that you have a much more streamlined and easy to use process. The really great thing about these integrations as well is that it actually allows you to use your existing systems and software to manage your content. And then you just use Fliplet as a tool to make that content available on mobile, for example. This can be really great because your staff and internal teams will already be familiar using these systems, and you don't have to train them on how to use Fliplet. You don't have to show them another solution. They can keep doing what they've already been doing for years. And then all you're doing is kind of adding an additional option for them to make that go live. And finally, as well, about the data, it also allows your apps to work within existing workflows that you already have. So what we see a lot of clients coming to us for is they have an existing workflow or they have an existing process internally, or maybe with working with clients, and they want to add some kind of mobile part to that workflow or solution. Maybe it's about uploading content in an easy to do way. Maybe it's about finding specific content on the go on mobile. So what you can do with integrating and taking data from existing systems and showing it in Fliplet is you kind of allow the app to just work within existing workflows rather than creating something completely unique. And I think as I've been talking about this, it's all about making everything accessible on mobile. I think most of us these days are kind of glued to our phones. We always have our mobile devices with us. So making sure that your data and content is accessible on mobile is a really big benefit. It means it's easy to use. They always know where to have it. They have it on the go. And one of the great things that I'll show you later on in this presentation is that you can actually combine data from different sources in one place and then expose that on mobile. So that's another really powerful reason why you would do this. And then on top of that, you also get all of the Fliplet capabilities. So you're pulling data from your system, putting that into an app in Fliplet, and then you can add any of our features and components on top of that to really create a really functional mobile app. So that's quickly about the whys of these integrations. So we're now going to go in and look more specifically at each of the three integrations, starting with Microsoft. And we're starting with Microsoft mainly because Microsoft and Office 365 is really one of these products that all of our clients use. There has been a number, or I don't even know how many number of conversations I've had with clients that are asking me about how do I get the existing data I already host in Excel or SharePoint into the Fliplet data sources. And for those of you that are not familiar with Fliplet, the Fliplet data sources, they just look like a big spreadsheet, and it's just where we store data inside of Fliplet. So it looks pretty much like an Excel sheet. So most of the time, a client will have some kind of information already in the Microsoft system and wanting to put that into Fliplet. This is where it kind of comes down to in the past, what clients had to do is take a copy of that data and paste it into Fliplet. This is where having different versions of different data living in different systems really becomes a problem, because you have to make sure that they are both up to sync, up to date, and that can be a really manual process. So what we have done is we have built an integration which allows you to use Power Automate or Logic apps to connect your Microsoft products to Fliplet. If you're already a Power Automate and Logic app user, then you can actually start using our templated connectors straight away. I'm going to show you a little bit later on exactly what those do. And it's there for you to start using and working that into your workflows right now. We have, as a starting point, built a couple of these custom connectors as templates so you can just start using them. But we also don't want to limit you in any way. So you also have the option of completely building out your own integration with our public APIs that you can use to share data back and forth. So how does it actually work? So as I mentioned, in Power Automate or in Logic apps, you've got different connectors that we have templated out there. So when you go through and you configure your workflows in Power Automate and you go through and you configure your workflow in Logic apps, there will be an option there for you to choose Fliplet and to choose these different actions and triggers that you can actually do with these actions. So what you would just do is you would work as you normally would inside of these systems, and then you integrate Fliplet into your existing processes or create a new workflow. And this works for both cloud and desktop automation. So more on the actual templated connectors. So there's four main things that you can do with the templated connectors. The first one is to read from an Excel file of data, and then you can copy that data into our data sources and vice versa. So the two systems can basically talk to each other. You can manage it all in Excel, send that to your Fliplet app. And if the app, for some reason, is collecting data from your users, maybe you have a form, maybe there's a profile that you allow your users to populate themselves, then you can send that back and forth. Same with SharePoint. So if you have a SharePoint list of data, you can copy that into the Fliplet data sources, and then that can go back and forth if you, for some reason, are collecting more information from the app. That just means that you have a really in sync data source, and they're constantly kind of talking to each other, making sure they're up to date with the same version. You can also read from an XML file and from a JSON file and copy that data into our data sources. So that's also a possibility. So what are really the benefits with this? So like I mentioned, one of the key benefits is that your staff can use systems and software which they're already familiar with. We've had a client specifically building out an integration and using our integration for this reason. They had a SharePoint list where they had lawyers filling in information about different legal updates. They were familiar with the system. They knew how it's used. They've used it for years. And so using the integration, they can just take that data, put it into Fliplet, and then they could expose that in a mobile-friendly app that they were building for their customers and their clients. So making it easy for the lawyers to have to maintain the content, but also getting that content and putting it into a mobile solution that is then being presented to clients. It allowed their app to also work within an existing workflow that they had. So instead of actually changing how the lawyers work, they're actually just adding on another option for that content to be mobile friendly. So it's just an addition rather than actually changing anything or creating additional work. What you can also do is you can control the edit and or the admin access to Fliplet Studio and apps. So what this means is that if you kind of allow your staff to maintain and work with the content inside your existing systems, it means that you can keep quite a tight control over who can actually access your app inside the Fliplet Studio. If you are the one actually building it, you're configuring it, you're the app developer, and you have certain people just managing the content, you can keep them outside of the system. And that just means that you don't have to show them the system. You don't have to teach them anything about building apps. Some people get really scared thinking that it's a really hard process, even though the Fliplet Studio is really easy to use. So you can kind of keep those access points separate, which can really help when it comes to training and showing people how to do things. And like I mentioned a couple of times, it just means that it's removed necessity to duplicate the data between different systems. So a couple of quick use cases before we move on to the next integration. And one of them I've already mentioned, but this is where we've seen clients starting to use this a lot. It is to use Excel or SharePoint to manage your content that you might already have in those systems, systems that your staff are already familiar with, and then you use Fliplet to display them. So you see a couple of screenshots here really about different kinds of newsfeed app where you're just displaying the content in a really nice visual way. This is being used often for news feeds. It can be used for legal updates. It can be used for events lists. All of this content that you will have somewhere on your system, you might just want to repurpose it in different times. The use case that I mentioned earlier about the client using SharePoint to then have the lawyers update the legal updates that goes into the app. This is exactly the kind of feed that they could build into their Fliplet app with the SharePoint data. You can then also, as you see here, add on more functionality. So when you're building your mobile app, you get the data from SharePoint and then use the Fliplet capabilities to allow users to engage and interact with this data. So you can allow people to like things, you can bookmark things, you can comment, you kind of create a bit more engagement that maybe you don't get in other services. And what you can also do is create more of workflows and add Fliplet into your workflows, as I mentioned. So for example, what you could do is if your app in Fliplet is doing anything like collecting data from your users, then you can have specific triggers and actions happening as that data has been collected. So for example, imagine you have a marketing type email where you're asking users to subscribe to different newsfeed letters, different topics. what you can do is you collect that information from Fliplet and you can send that then back to your system where you're keeping a complete record about subscriptions. So you can have email marketing, email account lists, you can have event registrations. And then what you can also do when you're using Power Automate or any of the Microsoft tools is that you can then have different actions and triggers going on after you've collected this data. So maybe what you want to do is you want somebody to be told every time somebody's registered for an event. So you can set up a Teams message to go off and tag specific people that should be aware. Maybe you send an email to a certain group so that they are aware that somebody changed their marketing notifications and preferences. There's a lot you can do here to kind of make the app fit into your existing workflows. And that's really it in terms of a quick overview of the Microsoft integration. This is ready for you to go in and have a play around with now if you want to. The only thing you need is a Fliplet account. You need to have access to your Microsoft products. And then there's a link here with how you can get to use the connectors that are already pre-built. And if you have any further questions or if you'd like to speak to us about the requirements, then we're very happy to do that as well and book in a meeting. So moving on quickly to our HighQ integration overview. So HighQ we built this integration because of demand from our existing customers who use HighQ Collaborate to collect and display information specifically when it comes to clients. So they're using this as a kind of client extranet for sharing files, for sharing data back and forth. It's great. It's got a really simple interface. It's nice and easy to use, but it doesn't have an available mobile app. So a lot of people come to us and say, I've got this information, I've got this functionality, I would like to put it onto mobile. And that's the key reason why we built this integration. So the key features of this really are twofold. It is firstly about syncing data between the different systems. So you'll see a lot of familiarities here with Microsoft because it's all about the data. So really what you can do is you can sync your existing data that you have in HighQ iSheets into the Fliplet data sources. You can see a screenshot here of what our data sources kind of look like. So it's very structured in a way that you'd recognize from Excel. This allows for your data to be edited, updated, and managed through your Fliplet app. And then it can also be synced back to HighQ. So again, making everything mobile available, you can allow your clients or users, whoever should be able to make changes to this data to do it on the go on the mobile. And then we can send all of that data back to HighQ so you all have it in one place. What a lot of people are also using it for is enhanced document management. So what you can do with this integration is that you can sync and share documents between your Fliplet apps and your HighQ file storage. So for example, putting documents in an app can be really great because you can make them available offline. So if you have really critical documents that I need to be able to access wherever I am, whether I have an internet connection on my mobile or not, then this is a really good solution for you. You can allow people to upload documents into the app and then sync them back, or just present them to the user. You have a lot of options about what editing rights, what viewing rights that the user should have, and what they should actually be doing with that information. And then on top of that, you also get all of the security features that we have with Fliplet. So whenever it is about data or files, then you can, as in the example here, be very specific about which users can access the information and what can they actually do with that information. So you can add on top of what you already have a ton of layers of protections for this information. So I can say, I want my admin users to be able to manage all of my documents and data, and that can then sync back to HighQ. Maybe you want your clients to be able to browse certain kinds of information, maybe edit other kinds of information. So here you can be really granular about those permissions and who should be able to do what. And finally, again, you have the flexibility of customizing the app and adding additional functionality with Fliplet that you maybe don't have otherwise. So customize it to fit your workflow, customize it to fit your need, customize it to fit your branding, and then get it onto mobile for everyone to use on the go. And so what are the specific use cases that we've seen for this? So firstly, like I mentioned, a lot of clients are building mobile client portals, and you can do that with HighQ, and then with Fliplet kind of extends that offering with making it mobile friendly. So it's really an extension of maybe what you're already offering. It can be really secure. It can be client specific. So what you can do with Fliplet is that you can send us a ton of data and then you decide, I want to show this data to this specific client, or show some other data to another specific client. So you can make it very specific depending on who you're building it for. Another great thing about making it mobile is that you can leverage like mobile and native mobile capabilities, such as publishing something on the App Store, meaning it's searchable, gives you a little bit of marketing as well. But you can also publish it privately to your clients if you wanted to. You can also utilize features such as push notifications, which are really powerful to drive engagement. So another use case is a client-facing marketing app, which collects information from the users and then write that information back to HighQ iSheets. This is a really good way of allowing users to put in information in a mobile-friendly way. They can do it on the go wherever they are. And then you write that information back to iSheet so that you have one record of that user's information in one place. We've seen a client doing this with us, and it's really powerful to kind of have different means of updating information. It's nice and easy, and you still have one place where you're keeping all of that content. And finally, what we've also seen clients doing is embedding Fliplet apps within HighQ screens. So rather than taking data out of HighQ and putting it in Fliplet, you can also do the vice versa. So if you have a HighQ site, what some clients have done is, in order to improve the functionality of those HighQ sites, you can build your app in Fliplet and then you embed that within your HighQ site. This means that you can add functionality such as quizzes, decision trees, assessments. All of the interactive and engaging components that we have in Fliplet can be used in HighQ sites. It also means then that if you're using a form within that embedded screens, that gets collected by the app and then synced to iSheets. So again, you have it all in one place. And then we're going to finally look at our foundation integration overview. So the foundation integration, we built it out of conversations with our clients who are using foundation. And what they really wanted was getting all of this important information that you have in foundation, such as the lawyer information, the client information, the matter information. They want to take that, put it onto mobile, and really be able to create a really powerful directory where you can find a lot of information on the go wherever you are. One of the great things that we've seen clients doing with this is that you can also combine data from different sources. So creating a directory within Fliplet means that you can take data from foundation. You can also fill a person's profile with data from different systems. Maybe you have your personnel data in SharePoint, send that to Fliplet, and then enrich it with your foundation data to create a really powerful and a really rich profile for your lawyers, including what are they working on and how much money are they bringing in. The great thing about doing this and putting it all in mobile is that it's just really easy to use. If you're struggling to get adoption on foundation or any other technology, making it as easy for people as possible to find it and to use it is really going to drive that engagement and make sure that people come back to it regularly. You can also, again, use the app to collect and capture information to then write that back to foundation. And I'll show you a little bit in the presentation later on how you can do that easily to make sure that you're collecting as much information and creating these really full records. So what is the specific foundation data and how would you actually present that in an app? So looking first at attorneys and staff information, you can display the complete staff record. So whatever information that you have about a person, you can put that into their profile. You can include things like time spent by industry, number of matters that a lawyer is working on, and the number of clients that they are working on. So you can see in the screenshot just a bit of an example of how you can present different kinds of data. So it can be just written text, it can be links. And whenever you've got things like time spent by industry, what would be really powerful is have this kind of chart example to really show how much time is somebody spending on certain things per industry. And what you can do is you can make this data visible to the users that should have access to this data. If any of this data is sensitive information, what the Fliplet app lets you do is it lets you set up different views for different kinds of users. Now, moving on to matters. So when it comes to the matter data that you have in Foundation, this might differ a little bit for all of you, depending on what information that you actually have in Foundation. But you can show, for example, a list of all of the different matters that you can then search, you can filter, you can bookmark things to get to them nicely and easily. You can show matters per industry. You can show matters per type of matter that it might be. You can see the total number of timekeepers and hours spent on a specific matter, and therefore how much money it's generating. You will be able to display and show different narratives for each of the matters. And this is what we're going to look at in a second, including capture narratives inside of the app if you wanted to make that as easy as possible to do. And you can also show related parties. The great thing about creating these apps in Fliplet is that you can also create relationships between all of these different data types. So imagine you have a lawyer working with a specific client on these matters. You can go from the lawyer's profile into the clients they're working with and go from there into what matters that client is working on those specific clients with. So it kind of breaks down the data on a granular level so that you have all of that accessible easily. And then you can present it in a nice and easy visual way, however you want it. And so quickly just looking at the client information. So you can include the data that you have here for your clients, but for example, you can have the total billed hours, the total billed monetary, and then total hours that these clients have been worked on across all the different matters, and then any related matters and any related stuff to that specific client. So again, creating these links between the different screens and between all the different data points, so you get a really holistic view how it all hangs together. And so I've mentioned a couple of these enhanced features earlier as well, but one of the great things with putting all of this information in your Fliplet app is that you get all of the enhanced features that Fliplet already offers you. So doing things like bookmarking your favorite data points to be able to get quick access to them at any point is a really great benefit. You can bookmark people, you can bookmark matters, you can bookmark specific clients, just meaning that if you come in and look at a specific client account because you're really interested in the number of billing hours for that specific client, the number of matters that we're working with them on, then you can quick and easy come in, filter your list to only get your bookmarked and favorited items in there. You can also customize what data is available with Fliplet Studio. So in Foundation, you're probably going to have a ton of data points. What you can do is send it all to Fliplet, and then you have a lot of options in terms of how you want to display that data, how you want it to be shown, how you want to structure it. Do you want it to be in a chart kind of way? Should it just be printed out? What should be used as filters and for search items? You have a lot of options about what to actually do with that data once it's in our systems. And as I mentioned, you can allow different users to have access to what they actually need. So you might have certain users that need to see all of their financial information, but maybe you have other users that don't need to have that low level of detail. Then you can manage that access level inside of the app. And as I mentioned as well, what you can do is you can use the app to capture data, and then that way make sure that your matter information is really full and really rich. So the way that we've kind of seen this work out is especially when it comes to narratives, or especially when it comes to related parties within a client or a matter, then these are things that you might need to update on the go. If you have been at a meeting with a client and you're in a taxi on your way back, you need to update the narrative. You can do that on the go from your mobile. You fill in this quick form. It then saves it to the app and sends it back to Foundation. So you have that complete record of data and about that matter and client. What you can also do is you can receive reminder notifications. So do you know that you need to add narratives? You can send a reminder to prompt people to add their narratives as they go. So really, really powerful to kind of use all of these features together to make sure that you're collecting the relevant data that you need. And on top of that as well, you've got all of the Fliplet security recommendation that comes with it. And this is true for Foundation, but this is actually also relevant for the other integrations that we've spoken about as well. So whatever data and whatever app that you're creating with Fliplet, the security options you get with it just means that you can make sure that it's securely accessed. What we generally recommend, especially when it comes to things like the Foundation data, which is going to be really sensitive information, deploy it to corporate devices via an MDM, which means you have all of your internal and corporate security measures in place. The MDM is really the place that decides how it's being distributed and what security measures are there. So it means that your IT teams will already be familiar with how that works. You don't have to train them on a new system either. You can use AD groups to control who can download the app via your MDM. Again, your IT team will be really comfortable knowing how to manage this process because they've done it before for other apps. And then on top of that, you can also enable SSO to make sure that you log in with your corporate emails, and only then can you access what you should be accessing, depending on how the app has been configured and what data you have access to. So there's a lot of additional security recommendations that you have in place there as well, on top of just exposing and showing the data. And so how does it actually work? There's a couple of foundation API details you need to make this integration set up and working. It would then be loaded into a Fliplet data source, and then there's a couple of setups we need to do with some Fliplet actions. But if you are interested in talking to us further about the foundation integration, then we're very happy to jump on a call with you and talk through your requirements in detail. What you'll need to have is a Fliplet account, a foundation account, access to your API details, and then we can start adjusting and data mapping it to suit your needs. And that's really it when it comes to the integrations that we're offering. Hopefully you found this helpful, and hopefully you can see how all of these integrations just allows you to use the systems you already have, use the data you already have to add additional offerings and features with the Fliplet apps.